way of explaining it.
LGBT?
Yeah, I mean,
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender.
that. That you feel that you're a victim based on your sexuality, then you have to help us understand what was said, what was done, in order for us to be able to pursue it in that particular manner. We don't want to miss it. But are all of our officers trained in that? No, they're not. They're not. But are we willing to train our officers in that? Yes. And please believe that we are.
We got a couple of back there first. But one of the things, I won't call out people's names because of privacy.
I don't care.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I have a question. I'm on the Pride Task Force, and I have been for 5 years. We moved our Pride this year to North Carolina Music Factory rather than Gateway. The officers at Gateway were phenomenal. They treated us well. They liked doing our event. We get along with the city, and we try not to do anything wrong during our event. When the event came here, we didn't have the same officers, because I'm assuming, there's no assuming, that it was a different precinct. Because the officers that we did have, some of them were okay, gay accepting, but there was officers that were not gay accepting. And I know you're sitting here saying you don't want to make a little group, you want to train everybody, but you have to start with a little group and show them what it is that we need. Because if you're telling your officers, hey, you know what, it's a gay festival, get over it, just go, they're going to be, you can't do that.
That's not the way we operate. And if it's all duty jobs, and depending on where the event was, people sign up for all duty jobs. And this venue right here, there's a cadre of officers that work every event in this venue. In the same way where you had it at the Gateway, there's a segment of officers that work every event. They're tied to the venue, not necessarily to an event, but tied to the venue. But do I believe that I have officers that are accepting or not accepting? I'm not so naive to believe that I don't have, because they're human beings and they're going to bring their prejudices to the job. But if there's an issue that I can address, then I will. But I think the venue, I can't sit back and say, well, I'm only going to assign certain officers to your event. I can't do that. That's just like me telling a neighborhood that I'm only going to assign only certain officers can work in your
So then basically what you're saying is you're willing to train all your officers,
yes,
when they work at a GLBT event, so they understand.
And you know,
and I realize we have to deal with pickers. I'm not from there, from California. We don't have pickers out there. But what I'm saying is, our program deals with pickers. We have our partners in peace, and they do a fantastic job. But we just need, I feel that we need at least more backing when it comes to events, gay events, and they need to be trained in the area of GLBT.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly on that, but how do we get that done? But I can't get it done. I know I can't get it done just by saying just this group of people, officers, you follow this group around, because that bends everybody else to say, I don't have to. I don't need to deal with it. And I can't operate the department based on that.
Behind you first. No, you got it. Yes. Okay, Brandon.
As I understand it, there are a number of cities across the country that already have programs like this in place, that have LGBT liaisons. One that comes to mind is Atlanta. Would you be willing, or have you reached out to other cities for input on how they deal with our issues?
Well, you know, I'm originally from D.C., and in Washington, D.C., we had a unit in Washington. It still has a unit in Washington. They also have an Asian liaison unit. They have a Latino liaison unit. But you're talking about a police force of over 4,000 officers that cover only 60 square miles of territory. We're a department of 1,700 that covers over 450 square miles. And every time I pick somebody to create that unit, I don't get new officers. My strength doesn't go up to 1,760. It's still 1,750. So every officer that I take, comes out of your neighborhood. And until we have a different philosophy of how we staff, then I have to try to get the most out of our staff. And that is saying that I want everyone to be cognizant of those issues. The same way with, again, I talk about the mental health. I mean, we're upwards to about 800 of our officers now that have been trained in dealing with mental health issues with our certain population. And that has tremendously reduced the number of arrests and created a great amount of sensitivity amongst our officers when they deal with that population. But it's going to take time to get that 1,700 training. And that's what we want to do.
I basically had the same question that me as a citizen and coming from a big metropolitan area, can't imagine that there's not a national sensitivity training that's available to all police forces across the country. That there's not even like a curricula that could be followed. And that so am I to understand that you would have to make that happen, is the way I see it?
No, we would have to make
We
that
would have to make that
We would have
happen.
to
But
make
you
that
are
happen.
willing to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the curriculum should look like.
But that's what to me is unfathomable in this day and age. There's New York City, San Francisco.
You're talking about.
So it'll be groundbreaking.
Yeah, you're talking about mega cities. You know, and Charlotte, as big and pretty as we look here, we're still a southern town. I mean, and there's the small town ways. So I mean, you know.
So we have to make it happen.
You got to make it happen.
Okay.
I'd like to follow up on that first. I understand there's training coming out to the next academy on LGBT issues, and I don't know what it is. I found it out in conversations we had working with your staff, and I tried to reach out to the person putting this training together, Captain Jimmy Fields.
It's Jimmy Fields. It's state mandated training for
Right.
January last year.
That's focused on this issue.
Not in, yes,
You're talking about
but
here
primarily focuses on the domestic violence issues.
I'm so sorry, can you guys repeat that? I can't hear
Yeah,
what was
okay.
still inside.
There's a state mandated program coming out, or John, you want to say it loud so I want to hear you, or you want me to pair it?
Yes, our part of our state mandated training this year will include LGBT issues as it relates to domestic violence and our ability to investigate that. I don't have the curriculum yet, and the issues that you're talking about here are probably broader than that. Specifically, we will have that training released, and that should be in January.
That's something that we're willing to share. But that's something that the state mandates. You know, all of our officers are certified by the state, whereby they give us a certain block of training every year that they say that every police officer must be trained on this particular subject matter, this particular way. We are given freedom throughout that year to train our people on other items or other issues that we see that are germane to our community. So there's some latitude. And we haven't seen that training yet, but we know it's coming down in January, but we just don't know what it looks like this time. That may be an opportunity for us to, and if you call Jimmy up and say, Jimmy, I'm Roberta Dunn and Terry Rodney, I want you to work with me on that. Now, tell me something.
I did call. I did say that, and I got phone.
But what did we say? Who did we say? With that same issue, that's the person you call. JD, John Diggs, and then Diggs will make that connection and that relationship with Jimmy, because
I appreciate it.
That's how
And he's a great person. I want to say that. There's no staff in here was fantastic. I want to say that.
Johnny is.
Yes, Myra.
I want to go back to what she was saying about the cops. Excuse my pronunciation.
Cops is okay. You know
I'm not calling you pigs.
Cops stand
So it's
for
perfectly
Constable
okay.
on Patrol, and that's the good thing. It's not,
Okay.
cops is not a bad thing.
I lived in Florida, and I worked in a store called Brandsmart, and we had police officers that would come in and work shifts every day. It was on their off time. They would sign up and they would work. If we, me in particular, did not get along with one of the officers, I went right up to the vice president of the company that was in the store all the time and told him, this is not good. I'm out. I don't care. If somebody would come up to me and say, are you gay? I would say, yes, I am. Are you? You know, I'm just not bothered. I am. I like to have a good time. But if I don't get along, and if I would have known that there was officers there that were not doing what we thought was right, I would have gone over and in my own nice way, I would have found out his name, what precinct he's come from. I would have looked and said, oh wow, Officer so-and-so, and your badge number is so-and-so. And I guarantee you that I would have called. I don't beat around the bush. And I would have known, and I would have told him, you're in trouble. You're in trouble now, because I'm going to report you for the way you're treating me.
You know, there's two things you got to remember. Venues such as this is off-duty employment.
Right.
And the officers are working at the pleasure of the venue. And if it's your event, you know, up to a certain point, we're working for you. And if you have an officer, yeah, you're paying them outside of the police department. So I'm not paying their salary. You're paying their salary for that 8, 10, or 12 hours that they're working. And if you have a concern, if you have an issue, or you can request certain officers if in fact you are paying in an off-duty. So if you know Officer Cunningham and Officer Diggs that you want to work your particular event, you can call into the off-duty employment office and request those particular officers.
Right. I mean, now that we know who we can call them up and ask, who would you recommend? What do we do to get certain offices that are gay-friendly, that are not going to, you know, walk by? And I'll be truthful. I'm 65 years old. I have never once been called a lesbian. I have never once been called queer, other than my friends. Because I am a little strange, but nobody has ever said anything to me derogatory. And I'm from New York, and I'm Jewish, and nobody down here had never been to say anything to me that's derogatory, because they're not going to like to hear my mouth.
I have an expectation, we all have an expectation, that our officers are going to be professional.
Absolutely.
And if they're not, then you need to say something. I can't correct any problem with an officer being unprofessional if I'm not made aware of it. And, you know, sometimes you can think, well, nothing's going to happen. I tell people, I may not get that officer the first time, but if I have similar complaints come in to say that this officer's behaving, I got them in. Because they've established a pattern that they can't, you know, I may not get you the first time. But if that behavior continues, and the only way I'm going to know if that behavior continues is if you say something.
Absolutely.
Chief Monroe, thank you, first of all. And until your department might be ready to do a liaison, I consider you to be the liaison between the whole community and now our community directly as Chief of Police. And I'm sure you understand your presence here lends some comfort to our community, because we have to be able to know that we can call someone in a position of authority. We are probably one of the last few groups where politicians and preachers feel perfectly comfortable in condemning us and denying us our rights. And I would never put you on the spot, but I want you to take into consideration one thing. There's a history in Mecklenburg County of enforcing federal law when it comes to immigration issues. I would hope that you would take into consideration helping enforce the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd federal law when it comes to
And that's something that you should expect. And, you know, and the whole immigration issue, and again, I cannot, as a law enforcement officer, look to weigh into issues that are not criminal in nature. I tell